The Steve Dangle Podcast with your hosts, Steve Dangle, Adam Wilde, and Jesse Blake.
Jesse, Steve looks a little dressed up today, doesn't he?
Yeah, it's funny. This isn't the outfit he started out with.
No, it's not. It's strange.
Well, fellas,
it's weird because hold on. It was weird because Steve was off mic for just a little bit before the show started, and all you hear in the background is beep, 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 swearing, and we're like, "Wait, maybe you got a bad email. Are we going to be able to do the show?" Like, this is how badly he was swearing.
Actually,
yeah. I was like, "Oh, I think something's." Yeah, you were pissed. So what happened?
well, I filled up my water to have water to drink during the show before promptly dumping it all over myself and the table that I used to do show. It was, and if I had just stood where I meant to in the first place, Jesse Blake, I would have been fine.
Do you want to explain this one, Jesse?
All right. So other thing with Steve, he does the show for anyone who doesn't watch from the standing desk on our Zoom call here. And he had the standing desk set up outside of the blue room. He's normally in the blue room, but it was outside the room. And I was like, why is the desk outside the blue room? He's like, no reason. I just didn't feel like moving it in today. And I was like, why did you spend 8 years building a YouTube channel, thousands of dollars? 12, sorry.
Well, no, since 2014 when I moved here. So
right.
Yeah, okay.
So
right.
12, whatever. Tens of thousands of dollars on plastic figurines to cover the room.
Okay,
and
that
then
is
decide to out of pure laziness, you decide to not move the desk and film inside the blue room. But you came to your common sense and did move it in.
I had some nice things out there. I had the Felix Potvin mask.
And
I
beer
could've displayed.
cans or something.
It was the Bud Light. I got there was Pink Whitney on there. What else? Some hockey gloves.
Is Pink Whitney good, by the way? I haven't had it yet.
It's insanity. It's insanity in liquid form. It's so me and producer Drew bought some in St. Louis and we were drinking it. And before I realized, like, I'm pretty drunk. And I looked at the bottle and I'm like, this is, I can't remember. It's like 30%. I'm like, this tastes like Kool-Aid. What the hell? I am not 19 anymore. What am I doing drinking this? It was almost 32 at the time. It's a hangover in a glass. Listen, if you're in college right now, I bet it's awesome. It is not made for the pace that I currently live my life at.
Fair enough. Now, so now that we've got the water spilling and the desk out of the way, gentlemen, first off, need to send my grievances. I've got a couple grievances. I got the first one is Alex Pietrangelo, who signed about an hour after the show last time, and Nate Schmidt, who was traded about an hour after the show with CJ. So shenanigans and grievances filed with the Vancouver Canucks, Vegas Golden Knights, and Pietrangelo's agent. But also, I would like to call shenanigans on something that happened on the last show. Something that I've seen develop, something that I have been sitting around watching, and frankly, I'm not going to lie, not being too happy about.
Have you been taking names there, Adam Wilde?
I have not been taking names. I think I've just been observing. I've been observing sports in its natural habitat, and I'm a little upset.
Where have you been quarantining? In your feelings?
I've been yeah. I have been quarantining in my feelings, and I think it's time that we discuss something. On the last show, Chris Johnston,
I love him.
Our favorite guy.
Great guy.
Fourth member of the show, where we are 3 of 4 without him.
D'Artagnan.
If there was one thing that you found out completely new,
brand new
from last episode, something you'd never heard before, something you've never read before. There's oftentimes Chris will tell you something that you've sort of heard a nugget of, but he goes deeper and you go, wow, that's a great piece of information. But this was not even a storyline that made our lineup for the prep.
This is breaking news.
What was the breaking news bomb that Chris Johnston dropped on the show?
Would you like me to play it?
Oh, even better.
I think you should play it.
Even better.
I think I should play it.
You should play it.
I love these signings. I just think there's no downside if you're Toronto. And, you know, I still think Joe Thornton's coming here too. Like I don't know how this is all going to fit.
That'd be cool.
Okay.
I don't.
There's a bomb. Really?
Well, let me reclassify this a little bit more accurately. I think that they remain very interested in Joe Thornton, and I think he is open to the idea. It's not that obviously if it was done, they would they would announce it. It'd be on the Leafs PR account. But I think that there's some mutual interest there still. So even the bottom six is still a bit of like, if we're going to ask what the lines look like I have no idea where this all fits with all these guys they're bringing in. And if they added someone like Thornton, it's what kind of points me again to trades. Like I think the Leafs are in on everything right now.
There you
go. Little juicy theory in there. And technically he wasn't breaking that Joe Thornton was signing with the Leafs.
No, he broke.
But the way he worded it at first sounded an awful lot like Joe Thornton is actually, it sounded literally like Joe Thornton is signing with the Leafs, which everyone took and ran with. But was something missing, Adam?
Yeah.
What?
And this is where I drop my shenanigans flag on the field to all of you. To all of you.
To the internet at large.
To the internet at large. Because the one person I have not seen yet credited with this story is Chris Johnston. Not once.
But Adam, he's the guy who said it.
Is it, well, right? But what's weird about it is suspiciously a bunch of articles dropped about 2 hours after our show dropped saying that Joe Thornton and Toronto had mutual interest. And if you go to the timestamps on all of the outlets, all of them, TSN, Sportsnet, The Athletic, NBC San Jose, anywhere else where this story blew up and was hot, they're all about 2 hours after. And they've gone and it's continued for 2 more days. And not a single person, not one has said Chris Johnston on the Steve Dangle podcast. And I just want to say, I looked it up. I did my research and not a single person posted a single thing about Jumbo Joe before that episode. Not a single one. So I'm just going to throw this out there and not accuse anyone of anything. No. But can we credit Chris? For goodness sakes, he had the scoop on the rumor. This show gets 0 scoops. We get zero. We get 0.
And when we do, it's from him. Remember the Joffrey Lupul thing?
Yeah, that's right. We had the Joffrey Lupul scoop because Chris had the Joffrey Lupul scoop. If
Joffrey Scoopul.
Can you just give us this one? You guys get the rest of them. You get this. We get this one.
I have to shout out one person who did give us credit.
Shout him out, Jesse. I know who you're talking about.
Kevin Papetti.
Kevin Papetti, everybody.
King Kevin, as I'll call him moving forward. King Kevin did tweet out Chris Johnston on SDP and then quoted the Joe Thornton quote.
I think Account for Hockey had that too, which I love.
Yes.
Well, he just radioed us.
Oh, what is that? Okay, we did. Okay, I think I went at him too hard because I was like, please let people listen to this first, and then he didn't tweet about it all. It's like, oh no, I hope I didn't offend you. I felt that.
No, I'm joking with you, man.
Yeah, I hope he knows. I hope he knows that.
Yeah, please
only love.
Promote the show.
Yeah, really, exactly. Sorry. So if that came across as anything other than joking, I apologize. Seriously. Yeah. Oh my God.
Tongue in cheek.
Yeah, of course. And this is tongue in cheek, but also a little serious, guys. There were some reporters that had that story suspiciously after the SDP. And I don't want to say that this is where they got it, but I'm pretty sure it's where they got it. And I'm a little bit perturbed for our friend, our D'Artagnan.
Not now, Adam. You're not a little bit perturbed for us?
Well, no, not really, because no one's going to believe it coming from us. They wouldn't even. Okay, let's be honest. All right. If TSN had to source Chris, if they had to, they're not going to source him on our show. And if Sportsnet had to, they're not going to source him on our show. And if
they would. No, they would.
Oh, they wouldn't. No, they wouldn't. Come on. Well, they've got their personality. Why does it matter what show it came on? They're going to be like, yeah, no, Chris said this. We know that because he works for us. You know, and the Athletic wouldn't say that either. And that's okay. We're sort of just the stage that it happened on, and that's all right.
Sportsnet credited us when it was What's-Its from the Panthers.
Because we did a 45-minute interview with Doug Sifu.
Doug Sifu.
Yeah, well, they had to.
What's it?
What are they
going to say? Billionaire, what's it?
I know. I couldn't get Bill Zito out of my head. And Doug Sifu. I wrote about it in the book. It's a whole chapter.
I know. Listen,
what a dick.
No, Doug was great. And well, they couldn't not source us at that point.
Well, they used our audio.
We were the only ones with the story.
Yeah.
But I just think I just find it, you know how I just think it's funny how?
Do you think it's funny how?
I just think it's funny how. How about we all put it back to our boy Chris, who had the story. And by the way, story's not done yet. So we'll see what happens with Jumbo Joe. I don't know how it all fits.
Where did Chris have it, Adam? Was he standing in the middle of Dundas Square just shouting it? Or?
He had it on the Steve Dangle podcast, which apparently people actually listen to, according to Chris. I haven't seen that mentioned, though. It's weird.
Got a lot of listeners.
Yeah.
It was good. Man,
Fun
great
listeners.
episode. I love CJ.
Fun.
Everyone's like, oh, CJ episode. I'm like, yeah, I know.
Trust me, we're just as excited as you are for the CJ episodes. They're just the most fun.
I'm like, man, Jesse hasn't spoken in a while. Oh, I haven't spoken in a while. And then I gotta remind myself to ask him something because you guys are just really good.
Well, no, it's just like I want to ask him questions and listen to him talk. You know what I mean? He's just that kind of a guy where he's got so much information. So, and, a legitimate insider. You want to ask those guys questions.
I want to join the Big Brother program and have Chris as my big brother.
Yeah.
I never had a brother. Never had a brother. And I would like it to be Chris. He'd be my big little brother.
Let's talk about a scoop that we absolutely did not have and had no idea was coming, although we kind of thought it might be. Alex Pietrangelo signing in Vegas, a 7-year, $61.6 million contract. It's funny in the interview, he said he was kind of looking for a change of scenery. And I thought Greg Wyshynski had the best tweet, and I'm going to paraphrase it. He's like, yeah, for sure. You definitely wanted a change of scenery after you lobbied the St. Louis media to get re-signed in St. Louis. I'm sure that's what you wanted. Now, to be fair to Alex, Vegas seems like a pretty great destination to be. So,
and CJ brought that up. And,
right.
And I think on the note of what CJ said last show with regard to Vegas, I think we've had it all wrong. We've had it all wrong for 3 years, or at least in their inaugural season. Vegas is how are teams going to survive because they're just going to be partying all the time, and there's exactly 6 buildings in Vegas, and they're all casinos, and that's just where they're going to live. They're going to sleep 2 hours a night because oxygen will just be pumped at them 24/7. And CJ's like, no, they have nice suburbs.
Yeah,
pretty good price. It's a nice place to live.
Nice dry spot and good climate if you got asthma, a guy like me.
Yeah, and he pitched Vegas the way I think Brian Burke would pitch Vegas, the way he kept talking about it on free agency day. He would talk about the family angle, and Pietrangelo's not a young player in this league anymore. Mm-hmm. He's a family man, and I think he was sold on that and all the money.
Yeah, sure, which is good. It's good money. Somebody did a calculation, and forgive me, I feel like it was it Sarah Valley? I forget who had it, but they basically said the equivalent of what he made is the equivalent to $9.4 million based on taxes in St. Louis. So, I guess
breakdown if you like.
Do you have it?
Yeah. So here's the breakdown, starting with signing bonus and going to base salary. So I'm gonna call it middle loaded. So it's similar to how you're gonna see a lot, or how we have seen a lot of contracts because no one has any money because of COVID. So starting with signing bonus and then base salary, it's 3-2, 3-2, 7-1. So Vegas better have some cash coming in 3 years from now. 8, 4.3, 8, 4.5, 6, 4. And then the final year of his contract is 0 in signing bonus and 8.8 in base salary, which is very interesting because he'll be, I think, 37 and having 8.8 in just salary. He has a no move clause, but that's as good as one. Because if he's 37 and wash, no one's going to want him at 8.8 base. That's tough.
So I have a question.
Sure.
So St. Louis signs Torrey Krug for 6.5 over 7.
Was it 7?
Yeah, it was
7 years. Yeah, 7 years. Alex signs. How much is the AAV, Steve?
8.8.
8.8. Why couldn't Doug Armstrong find that extra $2.3 million to keep Alex Pietrangelo?
Let's go back. Why couldn't he, Jesse?
Well, he could have. Why did he refuse to?
Because they went out and got Justin Falk. Why? I guess he seems to, I don't know, he's moving forward. Colton Parayko is going to be the number one guy on the team going forward, but that still leaves me with, why did they make the Justin Falk trade and give him all that money at the risk of losing Alex Pietrangelo? You could have, if they didn't make the Falk trade, they could have Alex Pietrangelo and Torrey Krug right now, potentially.
Yeah,
they could. So, especially if there wasn't any COVID.
You don't need him. You don't need Torrey Krug at that point. Because you need.
But you do it because it's hilarious.
Yeah, yeah.
You do it because it's really fun.
So that deal was signed last September, the Justin Falk one. So you think that's when they lost Pietrangelo?
Well, there were rumors at the time that he was kind of miffed about it because he's looking at the future, going, "Am I not included in this?" Because it was always going to be, they were going to lose one of, probably not Justin Falk because he just signed. So then it comes down to Petro, who walks, or Parayko, who you have to trade.
Right.
And Parayko's on, we've been talking for so long trying to galaxy brain a trade where Parayko comes to the Leafs. And the reason we do that is, 1, he's really good at hockey. 2, he shoots right on defense. And 3, is the value of his contract spectacular. And that's the right side. They had a right side of Falk, Parayko, and friggin' Petro. You can't maintain that. You can do that for a few years, depending on how you finagled the contracts. But when they got Justin Falk, they made sure that it was going to be very difficult to keep Alex Pietrangelo. And it's nothing against Justin Falk. Go get your money. And he's not a bad hockey player, but he's not Alex Pietrangelo.
Yeah.
And you lose your captain. No.
Well, something tells me that they wanted to, because all this seems a little too intentional.
It's weird, right?
Frankly, you can move $2 million, but they signed Torrey Krug up awfully quick.
Yep.
And I have a feeling, just a feeling, that their St. Louis management wanted to move on here for whatever reason. They made the Justin Falk move last year because they knew. And I just feel like it's something where Doug Wilson wanted to move on. He either didn't want to sign Armstrong, didn't want to sign a 30-year-old to an 8-year contract, which I don't blame him for. Didn't want to sign a 30-year-old to a 7-year contract, which I don't blame him for. I don't know how Torrey Krug is, but I know Justin Falk's 28. Makes me feel a little better if I'm him, although Justin Falk is nowhere close.
29, Krug.
Torrey Krug's 29. So it's a little better.
I had no idea, by the way. I thought he was like 25.
Right? Yeah, I know. I was thinking Torrey Krug like he's 20. I have a feeling that he wanted, because they've spent the same amount of money. In fact, probably more. But to me, it seems like Armstrong wanted to move on here. If he had wanted to keep Pietrangelo would have been in St. Louis. It seems like Pietrangelo wanted to stay in St. Louis more than St. Louis wanted him. Now, I want to throw this out there because Doug Armstrong saved Vancouver's offseason. Saved it. If Doug Armstrong doesn't force Pietrangelo out of town, and that's the narrative I'm going with, because that's exactly what happened. Let's be honest. Let's just be straight. He didn't want to keep him. I don't know why he didn't want to keep him, but he didn't want to keep him. And maybe that comes out later. But it's pretty clear that St. Louis did not want Alex Pietrangelo anymore. Crazy as it sounds. Strange, though, that move would precipitate Nate Schmidt getting dealt for a 3rd-round pick.
To a team that we thought had no money. And they said, want to bet. By the way, the way to guarantee that a team is going to acquire another big money player is to tell them they have to get rid of one of the big money players they already have. It happened with the Penguins. They're going to have to trade one of Crosby or Malkin, remember?
Yeah.
F you, and they go out and they get Kessel.
Yeah.
Hilarious. And now Vancouver. Now, I look at them, and I was trying to think of a criticism for Jim Benning, and there are plenty, obviously, in the way he's done this offseason. But I'm looking at him like, wait a sec. They only have $2 million in cap room right now, and they still have to re-sign Jake Virtanen and Adam Gaudette. Man, if you have a chance to get Nate Schmidt, you drive both of those guys to the airport.
Yep.
If you want to be, conscious of social distancing, you make 2 trips. But it's Nate Schmidt.
Yeah. And it's
having
Nate Schmidt
a 1-2
for a 3rd.
For a third, and you have a 1-2 on your left side now for the foreseeable future of Quinn Hughes and Nate Schmidt.
And
now re-signing Quinn Hughes is the difficult part.
Right. But that's next year's problem. And Jim has already shown that he doesn't really think in terms of years. He thinks in terms of what's in front of my face this minute when it comes to free agency. Let's be honest.
And there are guys coming off the books eventually. Or
well, there's about $9 million coming off the books, but Pettersson and Hughes are up next year. So that's one of them.
That's tough. That's
going to be tough. Honestly, they're going to have to buy out Louis Eriksson. I know nobody wants to talk about it, but they're going to have to buy out Louis Eriksson. Now,
I still think he'll become a Sen.
Oof, man, I don't know. But anyway, besides the point.
Sure.
When we talk about Jim Benning falling into a great deal, and I got to give the Canucks credit, him and his staff, for grinding Vegas down and giving them a third for Nate Schmidt, who is an outstanding defenseman. You know, you almost wonder if the Leafs hadn't assigned TJ Brodie, if they'd known Nate Schmidt was available for a third eventually, they don't sign anybody July 1st.
Maybe.
Right?
Maybe.
You can't take that risk. But I have to tell you, I do think that the Leafs would be like, give me all of that Nate Schmidt. Although he does bring a lot of the same things Morgan Riley does, just on the right side. That's why we like TJ Brodie. And I'm not saying they made the wrong choice. I'm just saying they might have done the other thing.
I'm just looking at Cap Friendly right now. Half the league could afford Nate Schmidt if they really wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
And the Canucks did.
Right. But that half of the league is on internal budgets right now. So maybe they could.
This is the issue.
So, but the point I'm trying to get to here is that Doug Armstrong has made the Canucks stronger. And the only way this has to end is the Canucks and St. Louis Blues in the playoffs. And I sincerely hope the Canucks win, because that would be perfect circle kind of shit that I absolutely love.
They've already done it.
What do you mean?
The Canucks beat the Blues this year.
Oh, well, they have to beat them again, though, with Nate Schmidt.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know they did that.
Better.
Right.
Yeah. Sorry. I was like, what?
One interesting thing that came out of the year-end Wrap 31 Thoughts podcast was insight on the Tanev and Markstrom deals. Because Elliot was saying that Benning had offered the same deals that Tanev and Markstrom got in the end, but he had offered them at the beginning of free agency during their negotiations, but those two offers were lower than what they thought they would get on the open market. Ooh. So once Calgary offered those deals to Markstrom and Tanev, instead of going back to Vancouver and being like, hey, we got the same deal from Calgary, they were like, no, Vancouver already lowballed us. Let's not go back to them and just sign with the new team.
But it's the exact same deal.
But they felt they were lowballed by Jim Benning on the initial offer.
Was the initial offer the same as what Calgary offered them?
Yes. So I believe it was $6 million for Markstrom, and Tanev got 4.5. So when Tanev gets the 4.5 from Jim Benning, he's like, no, I'm worth 6 or whatever number he thinks it is when I go to the open market. And then when he goes to the open market, he realized he could only get 4.5. And I guess there's an ego play there. Instead of going back to your team and being like, sorry, you actually had my right value, you signed with the other team so you don't take that ego hit. It's kind of how it unfolded with Jim Benning and the agents in the negotiation.
See, this is where negotiation gets personal, and you can't do that.
Isn't that the most silly thing, though?
If I'm Tanev and Markstrom, though, I sign in Calgary.
Why?
Because they're a better team.
Because you live there?
No, they're a better team.
Oh.
They're going to be a better team. And I say that they're going to be a better team immediately. Yes, Vancouver's got Pettersson. Yes, Vancouver's got Besser. Yes, they've got Quinn Hughes. Yes, they now have Nate Schmidt on the right side. And by the way, if you look at the advanced numbers, I'm pretty sure Nate Schmidt is like way better than Oliver Ekman-Larsson.
He's like Ekman-Larsson on steroids.
Like, not even
easy
a little
joke,
better.
Had to make it. Sorry.
He's a lot. Oh, that's funny. I get it. That's a throwback. But
tainted meat.
But Jim Benning was ready to give up the farm for Oliver Ekman-Larsson, and he gave up a third for a guy who's better. How crazy is that? Talk about a wild offseason. Now, if I am Tanev and Markstrom, I am an older guy, and I look at the Vancouver Canucks and what it's going to take to sign me and what it means for moving out other players. And you have to look sometimes at like what your responsibility on the team is going to be when you sign the contract there. And if I'm those guys, I'm going, so we're going to probably, just to break even on our deals, we'll probably have to get worse as a team. Whereas Calgary had the space, and Calgary has won the division several times in the last couple of years. Not that Vancouver's not on the upswing, not that they won't be a good team. But for right now, two guys who are 30 years old, who's closer?
Well, and especially
with them on it.
Like, I'm looking at Calgary. Like, 2 years from now, I know what Calgary roughly looks like.
Yes.
Barring a huge trade of some sort. Whereas I look at Vancouver and I go, how on earth do they sign these guys? Who is going to be moved out of town? How much longer do we have at this, et cetera, et cetera? Calgary, even though they only have 9 forward signed, 5D, and that's 3 goalies, and that's not including all the guys, the young guys they have in the minors and everything. Kachuk is signed for 2 years. Gaudreau, Monahan, Backlund is signed for 4. Lucic is signed for 3. Lindholm is signed for 4. Giordano is signed for another 2. Hannafin is signed for 4. Rasmus Anderson is signed for 5. Markstrom just signed for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And Tanev is obviously signed for 4. So we know Calgary could go at the Pacific Division for a couple years with a core of that.
It's pretty good.
You know what they're going to look like. They're not going to, it doesn't sound like they're going to screw with the team too much. I don't know. Maybe that was their thinking. I don't know.
I would say too, Calgary's a good place to live, and you have an opportunity probably to win quicker. I think Vancouver's cap problems will continue to be an issue. And if I'm Chris Tanev and I don't get a no move clause or a no trade clause, I'm concerned because next season I'm pretty sure I'm going to get traded. Because they're going to have to re-sign Quinn Hughes and they're going to have to and who's going to go? It's either you buy out Louis Eriksson, which I doubt the Aquilinis want to do, and I don't blame them. Like, who wants to pay a guy not to play for them so you can open up more cap space and spend that money again? Nobody wants to do that. So, I mean, otherwise,
everyone has a bloody no trade, no move. Like, I'm just like Tanev and Markstrom both got one.
Well, of course they did. But if I'm Jim Benning, I don't get them one.
Well, it's going to become a league. Or it's quickly becoming a league where the players just decide where they go no matter what.
Right.
Basically within some sort of reason.
Right. Right. Well, anyway.
And I mean, maybe they should. Like, do you want to be... I mean, a lot of players get offended when they get traded regardless, unless they request it. Now is a tough climate to... You're going to move us in the middle of a pandemic? Are you serious?
Yep.
Like, I could see how a player with a young family that they don't get to see very much, like that's panic mode right there. So I do want some sort of protection, and it's going to be like this for a year or two.
Let's get into Kellogg's Frosted Flakes Celly of the week, although it won't be a Celly of the week. Let's talk about, Steve, a Celly from Celly past. One of the great Cellys of your lifetime. I don't know what you're going to pick today. I have no idea. What would you like to go with?
Celebrate with Frosted Flakes.
Thank you, Tone. Chris Pronger. We've talked about him before.
Yep.
One of my favorite celebrations of his. What could it be? Well, he's won gold medals. Could it be from the gold medals? He's won a Stanley Cup. Could it be from the Stanley Cup?
I can't remember him scoring the Stanley Cup. Maybe just holding the Stanley Cup?
Adam, you know what I remember?
What do you remember?
What kind of a player was Chris Pronger?
Kind of a jerk.
Kind of a jerk.
Yeah, kind of not well liked unless he was on your team and then he was your captain.
He hit guys. He punched guys. He grinded his stick up and down your vertebrae like a xylophone. Gring, gring. But one of my favorite examples of Chris Pronger rough stuff was at an All-Star game when he decided that he's going to take his opponent into the boards and laugh while he's doing it. There's a picture of him laughing maniacally.
Oh, I know.
As he takes his opponent into the corner, and who is he crushing?
Justin Bieber.
Justin Bieber smashes him right into the corner, and he looks. He's got to be 35, 36 when this photo is taken, and he could just as easily be an 8-year-old doing bumper cars for the first time. He is just the happiest man in the entire world to be body checking Justin Bieber into the corner, and it is a Celly that is ingrained in my memory forever as being one of pure joy. So that is my Celly of the week.
Love it.
Tony?
Steve's great.
So something you should know. Montreal Canadiens forward Brendan Gallagher and Habs general manager Mark Bergevin have stalled.
Whoa.
Their car?
They've broken off.
Eric, Jordan,
No,
Mark,
not
Jared.
even Mark. No, there's a lot of
Not
stuff.
even Jared?
Not even Jared.
William? The
Guys-
lesser known stall?
Is that a stall?
No.
Gunner. No?
Braxton.
Gunnar
The
Stahl-
next generation.
Jesus. No, guys. Before the offseason started, Mark Bergevin came out and said, I want to make Brendan Gallagher the highest paid Montreal Canadian. He said that at a press conference.
Why did he say that?
Well, because Montreal Canadiens forwards don't make a lot of money. If you look at their forward group before Josh Anderson and Tyler Toffoli, who also don't make huge dollars, they make good money, 4 or 5 million. Nobody on that team makes a ton of money. Brendan Gallagher has been their beating heart for a long, long time.
What a stupid thing to say, though.
And he said it because he said it out of respect. Mark Bergevin, there's a reason he would say that. There's a PR angle with that, and that is that Brendan Gallagher is beloved in Montreal. He's coming into his last year, and this guy is a warrior for the Montreal Canadiens. He's exactly what, if I'm a Habs fan, Brendan Gallagher is everything that I want the Montreal Canadiens to be. And he is loved in the dressing room, hated on the ice when you got to play against him, the kind of guy that any team wants, and the kind of guy that teams are now calling about. Because it came out yesterday that negotiations have stalled. Now, I want to throw something at you. This is from Eric Engels. And this is important as a part of the negotiations, because you might be saying, well, listen, why would you grind, you're one of your top guys? This is a guy that it's like, this is a guy you actually pay, right?
Wow.
So, I'm Eric Engels at sportsnet.ca. Before Anderson and Toffoli joined the team, he was well within reason to be asking for a 7-year deal, much like the one Chris Kreider got for $45.5 million with the New York Rangers back in February. By the way,
Said there'd be no math.
I wonder with that Chris Kreider deal, if the Rangers are probably thinking, if we just waited 3 weeks.
Oh, dude, if any contract that was signed last season looks bad.
I don't think
Basically.
the Muzzin deal looks that bad, to be honest with you.
No, the Muzzin deal looks good, but like Engvall, 1.25.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Justin Hall's deal.
And Justin Hall at 2, you go, pff. And now with the cap not going up, I look at both deals like, oh, okay.
Oh, boy. Yep.
Yeah.
Now, to be fair, too, they signed those deals and proceeded to suck.
That too.
Here's something else for Gallagher to chew on. A deal signed right now might be the best one he's able to secure prior to the 2021-2022 season, because his role is likely to diminish this coming season. So this is interesting. You bring in 2 tough, grinding, scoring wingers. Tyler Toffoli at a really good price, about $4.5 million, less than he was making before, but he wanted that 4th year. Josh Anderson, who walked into Habs front office after they made the trade and said, listen, you're going to give me a 1-year deal or you're going to give me a 7-year deal. I'm not doing anything else. So sign me long-term or I'm walking in free agency. What do you want to do? And they didn't want to have Gallagher and Anderson up because obviously they would use each other as leverage for the other, right?
Yeah, and the fact that they traded for Anderson before they had a deal done is just insane.
It's insane.
He literally walked in, could ask for whatever he wanted, and he did it, and he got it.
Well, and all Gallagher has to do is outscore a guy who had 4 points last year, and he automatically goes, I want more as a baseline. And Mark Bergevin offered him more. Adam, I think you were right for the wrong reasons.
Well, hold on. I haven't made my point yet.
Okay.
My point is Brendan Gallagher is at, I'm just trying to provide context. My point is Brendan Gallagher, that was an Eric Engels point. Brendan Gallagher has lost his leverage. The Montreal Canadiens, assuming Josh Anderson is healthy, and let's say Josh Anderson is 90% of the player he was when he scored 26, 27 goals. Brendan Gallagher on this team does not have the same role anymore. And in fact, they can survive without him. And he becomes a very valuable trade piece at that point. And when you're Mark Bergevin, you've traded PK Subban and survived it. You could trade Brendan Gallagher and survive it.
You got to be wondering what could possibly get you fired.
Well, and that's exactly it. And
That guy's
He
GM
won that
for life.
deal. He won that deal. Shea Weber is the best player in that deal.
He did win
today.
that deal.
Yeah.
Yep. Now, I
would
have
have called it, but
No, me neither. And I think based on where Montreal was at the time, too.
and Domi Gauch. Yep.
But I want to say that I do think that Mark Bergevin brought those guys in, not only for the Canadians to get tougher, but also it was a smart play negotiation-wise because Brendan Gallagher's got to be thinking, what's my role in this team now? And this contract that they may sign or may not sign is going to determine that. This contract is going to say, here's where he is in the lineup. If he doesn't have one, Claude Julien basically can say, well, he's going to be here because this is where I want him. If he signs a Chris Kreider deal and he's the highest paid Montreal Canadian forward, then all of a sudden he's playing the top line minutes. And I would not be shocked, guys, if we start to see, as the season goes on, whenever the hell that season starts, wondering if Brendan Gallagher gets traded. And I know that's crazy, but I also feel like his role on this team is now diminished.
He's great on a 1-year deal for whoever wants him.
For who wouldn't want that guy? Who wouldn't?
The Habs should want him.
The Habs should want him. So listen, chances are he signs with the Habs. I get it. But I think that he's lost his negotiation position. That is my thing. I don't think he's going to get the Chris Kreider deal in the economy we're in. But also, I think just on this team, they have replacements. They can live without him. And that's the hardest part. You got to be the guy they can't live without to get the big bucks.
And I still think on your initial point, you were right for the wrong reasons.
Okay.
So I go, why would Bergevin say that? I want to make him our highest paid player. That's not out of respect to Brendan Gallagher. It's a quote that could, down the line, turn fans against him.
Interesting.
Because, listen, hey, you can't blame Bergevin for the way that the negotiations have gone. He wanted to make him the highest paid player. Who's the highest paid? Oh, well, I mean, Josh Anderson makes $5.5 million. I don't make $5.5 million. Do you make $5.5 million? No. And he doesn't want to play for our storied franchise, Le Bleu, Blanc et Rouge. And like, fans are passionate. There is a course on the religion of the Montreal Canadiens at McGill University.
Man, I would love to take that.
And it's not. So Gallagher's got to outperform Anderson, who makes 5.5, and Drouin, who makes 5.5. So there's two different guys. Even if he outperforms Anderson, well, who does Brendan Gallagher think he is? Drouin? Drouin was amazing for them before he got hurt.
He's got to also outperform Toffoli too.
And he's got to outperform. He has to be. Now he has to go out and be the Montreal Canadiens' best forward, which easier said than done. We talk about how they're thin, but like luck is an enormous factor. Philippe Deneau is a really good player who is also up, by the way, and because he's a center, might mess around and get more.
Mm-hmm.
Brendan Gallagher might be the highest paid. If he signs a contract today, he might be the highest paid forward for less than a year until they have to sign Deneau.
Right. And before they signed Anderson, he might have been, but I don't think he will be now.
I think this is Bergevin turning the screws on Gallagher.
I think so too. And if I'm Mark Bergevin, that's exactly what I do. And if I'm Brendan Gallagher, I might want to look at where I might be more needed, where I might be able to make more money. If there's a money concern here, if you want to be and I'm not saying Brendan Gallagher doesn't deserve it, but at a certain point, you got to look at your situation and think, okay, is my role filled here? Am I going to be able to play my best game here? Fit matters, especially when you're in that part of your career and you're that developed. You know, when you're a young player, you come in and you try to fit in. When you're a player like him, the team needs to fit you a little. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. You know, he scores and he works hard and he's tough as nails. That's a plug and play on 31 teams. He fits wherever.
We'll see on the Habs this year. Going to be very, very interesting.
We'll see.
Mark Bergevin, not afraid to walk away from people. Let's not forget about Radulov and Markov as well in the same offseason.
Yeah, but that also
does grind you.
Bit him in the ass. At some point.
Well, but he survived it.
Yeah, but we keep looking at Bergevin and his additions, and we go, okay, well, he won that trade, and he won that one, and he did well here, and he drafted well there. Why are they still 24th? And he's got to stop letting guys walk. He's got to, at the end of the day, like, it's difficult for him to play hardball with Gallagher when no free agent wants to friggin' sign there. Lock him up.
Point number 28 on Elliot Friedman's 34 thoughts this week, because of course.
Noted Matthews fan, Elliot Friedman. Noted James Reimer fan.
Michael Fuda was an excellent add to our draft coverage, telling a story about how Marc Bergevin likes to ease tension in the minutes before the draft by making goofy phone calls. After Fuda told that story, someone reached out with another example. Bergevin once phoned then Toronto GM Lou Lamoriello right before a Leafs pick and said, "Oh, sorry, butt dial," and then hung up. That's pretty funny.
That's really good.
I like that. So, yeah, I mean, that's pretty sweet. Marc Bergevin seems like a guy you get along with, but I surely wouldn't want to go head-to-head with him in a negotiation because the guy, say what you want about the decisions he's made, and they've been mixed, there's no question, he doesn't budge. He just doesn't.
Or
unless you're Josh Anderson.
Match. Also, don't want to go head-to-head with him in that because he is jacked.
There's a few coaches and execs that, because of our age, we only know as coaches and execs. Go back and look at Marc Bergevin highlights. Well, he did throw the puck in his own net once. That was funny. But if you look at like a highlight reel of Bergevin, or you know who used to be a maniac was Alain Vigneault.
Oh, really?
Those guys could beat the brakes off you like Street Fighter. Those guys, and they played in like one of the toughest, most psychotic eras of the sport. And now, we haven't seen them not in a tie or golf shirt for like the 1 or 2 decades that we've been seeing them as a coach or exec. But when those guys played, they were knuckles on skates.
Sure,
terrifying.
Yep, absolutely. Leafs TJ Brodie going to wear number 78 with the team. He said, "I wanted to stick with the 7. I was 79 in junior, but I didn't want to be that again. It's a number I can't really think of many guys that have gone with or worn it. I'm not too particular on what number I am. I've always just gone with what's available, and I thought I would change it up." And they asked him, does he know who he's playing with yet? Because this is important. Remember last episode I mentioned, it's not necessarily going to be Morgan Rielly. There's some projections that it's Zach Bogosian and Morgan Rielly, and then Muzzin and TJ Brodie, because they'd be a good shutdown pair. He said, "I didn't really ask. I knew there was a good chance of playing in the top 4, and for me, that's good enough. No matter who I'm playing with, I'm going to do the best I can for the team and try to make everyone better."
Listen, just be good. I mean, Jake Muzzin's good too. When you said, I was getting all huffy, and then you're like, "Okay, what about Muzzin and Brodie?" I'm like, "Yeah, all right." All right, that was pretty good. I don't know. Listen, Morgan Rielly put up 72 points, in major part because of the power play, but also he knew Ron Hainsey was never going to cross the red line.
Yes.
So if he does play with Zach Bogosian, I'll be mad, and then I'll get over it because I'm like, okay, as long as Zach Bogosian never crosses center ice.
Mm-hmm.
But let's not. Because I was like, well, then he could play with Justin Hall. On second thought, maybe he's better off with Bogosian. And like, who is the better player? I would say Justin Hall, but who is the better fit? I would not put Justin Hall with another. I think part of the reason Justin Hall exceeds with Jake Muzzin is Jake Muzzin hangs back.
Yeah.
Right. Justin Hall needs to be with someone who will let him fly, which is why the dermatologist pairing stopped working pretty promptly.
Very quickly. Yeah.
It doesn't work.
Do you guys want to do some trivia?
Yeah,
sure.
So TJ Brodie is going to be the first Leaf ever to wear number 78.
Wow.
So can you name the lowest number that no Leaf has ever worn?
Lowest number that no Leaf has ever worn. Does it count in
how many numbers are there that
99? The one that
haven't been worn.
I don't have that number. It's like a handful. It's like less than 10,
Well, 99 was worn by Wolf Paymont.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Lowest number. Now, does exhibition count?
No.
Okay.
No, it does not.
I wouldn't
count.
go
Or
on the
training
record.
Camp. Yeah.
I'm going to say. I'm going to say 58 because I remember 59 was worn by a guy named Bob Wren.
And Jamie Cyphers, I think.
Jamie Cyphers.
Or was he 56?
I'm going to say 58 just because I don't know. Come on, Steve, just pick one.
49.
All right.
49 has been worn by Brendan Leipsic.
Oh,
Really? When they were giving them weird numbers.
Pretty forgettable year.
Yeah.
Adam, what number did you guess?
58.
Adam, you nailed it.
Hey!
Get out of here! Wow.
Wow. All right. Well,
shocked.
guys, let's not put that to skill or memory. That was a dumb luck thing. Dumb luck.
Very good.
Well, I'm glad. I'm so glad.
58 is the lowest number that has never been worn by a Toronto Maple Leaf.
Well, here we go. That's what I'm going to get on the back of my jersey when I have Wild put on it. Number 58, Adam Wild. No one's going to know. No one's going to freaking know. Okay. Now, I do want to mention that there's a couple things in 31 Thoughts we should hit. Number 2, Elliot Friedman has also personally heard about Joe Thornton and the pitch. The courtship is...
Oh, how convenient!
Yeah, right? Tinfoil hat. And I bet the earth is flat, Elliot. Anyway.
And the dinosaurs aren't real, and neither is Joe Thornton.
The courtship is on and the interest is real. But one thing I've always been told about the future Hall of Famer, do not underestimate his loyalty to San Jose, which that's fair, right? Like,
of course. Now, he's just got to decide, are the Sharks going to be good? And he may need to wait until the season's already begun to have an answer there, because we all thought they'd be in Stanley Cup contention.
Yep.
And they missed the playoffs in a year where only 7 teams missed.
On the 31 Thoughts podcast, this is point 25, but also on the 31 Thoughts podcast, Zach Bogosian confirmed that he was 12 hours away from a face-to-face meeting with the Maple Leafs when David Ayers happened. Leafs GM Kyle Dubas canceled, saying it made more sense to go with youth than veterans after that result. It was a tough time for Bogosian. He was cut by Buffalo and looking for a new job. Boy, did he land on his feet. And I'm reading directly from Elliot. He said, I learned a lot in the last year. He said, you can go from the lowest of lows and finish off with the highest of highs. He had at least one larger out there. Elliot Friedman thinks New Jersey, but he chose to be in Toronto. Now, and I saw a few people tweeting about this, and I think it was Platinum Seekos who had it. He said, is it not a little concerning that after one game, you would cancel a meeting with a potential free agent like Zach Bogosian? And I think that's a fair point, except that game didn't happen in a vacuum. Mm-hmm. It's not like the few weeks leading up to that had been great.
It was the anvil that broke the camel's back.
100%.
Yes.
And I think, again, I think when you think about that game, we forget what led up to that and the enormous amount of frustration that we'd seen from this team. Lackadaisical bullshit, frankly. It was bad hockey. There was no heart, no soul. It was just bad. And you know what? This team always sort of hits a low in mid to late January anyway. It
was all season, man. They couldn't play 10 consecutive days consistently, except for the beginning of Sheldon Keefe's tenure. They really couldn't. Right. And Sheldon Keefe, to his credit, has, a quote that got sort of lost in the sauce at the beginning of this free agency period. He was asked about like the additions to the team and who the Leafs could go out and get. And he goes, let's not lose sight of the fact that this team has more to give. Like this group. And I didn't take it to mean, well, they're young players who are only going to get better because they're getting older and more experienced. He meant these friggin' guys need to learn how to bring it every single day. He might not, I'm putting words in his mouth, but he's absolutely right. This Leafs team had more to give. That's why, what are you so upset about? They make the playoffs. They score goals. They're fun to watch. Dude.
Who says that? I don't know a Leaf fan that's not upset.
Well, no. I see fans of other teams, and it's like it's frustrating because they're not as good as they could be. They're not living up to their potential. It's the Darcy Tucker thing from last show. I just want to grab them and be like, "Are you serious? Come on, guys! You had this opportunity in front of you, and they would just, dude, Casimir Kasky-Swo. Like, I wonder how he views his one NHL game."
Oh,
because it was this great story. I remember it was hockey night. It was this great story at the beginning of it, and his parents were there. And isn't this cool? And they let him get slaughtered. I don't know. He was in an NHL game. I don't know about the rest of the Leafs.
Well, and that's the problem. I think Kyle Dubas made a really good point when he said that, and I think he, to refresh everyone. To refresh everyone. Yeah, 100%. I mean, and the thing is, Kyle Dubas, you have to remember, he's learning on the job as well. And motivation becomes different once you've made the league. There's no question about that. When you're in the when you're in the minor leagues, and I mean like the OHL, even the AHL, the AHL is a little bit more like pro. But when you're a NCAA player, when you're an OHL player, if you don't bring it every night, you frankly will not make it. But if you already have a guaranteed contract and you're making, let's say you're making league min and you're making $700,000, $700,000 a year to play hockey. A lot of people would, a seventh of that would be more than most people see in a couple of years. And so sometimes people lose their motivation. And you're probably saying, well, these are pro athletes and they're making millions of dollars. No, they're still human beings.
And it's all relative. It's relative to your situation.
It is relative to your situation. And I think Kyle Dubas made the right call. Why would you reward bad behavior? And that's what he was saying. And it sucks for Zach Bogosian, at least in that situation. It sucked for a minute until Tampa signed him and he won a cup.
I tell you what, David Ayers better never pay for dinner for as long as Zach Bogosian is a Leaf.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really, really good point.
Or the Hurricanes are a franchise, you know?
Yeah.
They own dinner.
Yeah. That guy should be getting a lot of free meals. Put it that way. He did a lot of people a favor. The Leafs up there, but Zach Bogosian got a Stanley Cup out of it and $1 million contract. Do we think Zach Bogosian was going to get $1 million in free agency, having been cut by the Buffalo Sabres?
No.
That's tough. And I mean, and then everyone forgets about you. Imagine he doesn't get scooped up before the beginning of the pandemic.
No, forget that. Imagine he signs with the Leafs.
Yeah.
Right.
And they, frankly, shit the bed like they did.
And you're just one of the other guys on defense who didn't work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like nothing.
You're signing
Kyle
a tryout.
Dubas, and that's not a slight on Zach Bogosian. What I'm saying is we all figured out what Dubas figured out in that moment. Nothing he does that particular season was going to fix that team.
No.
Nothing.
Boy, that's got to be tough as a general manager when you're at the trade deadline and there's nothing I can do about this team. We're going to have to ride this team and hopefully things turn around, but I don't see it.
Well, that's why we saw them do all this confusing shit in the bubble. Like they called up Nick Robertson to be on the third line. What? Right. Andreas Janssen playing in an elimination game. And remember, I was like, I don't know. This sort of seems like they're giving him his opportunity to play his last game as a Leaf. And you're like, no, it's ridiculous. It's an elimination game. It was his last game as a Leaf. William Nylander playing at center. It was a sink or swim scenario. Mm-hmm. So you guys like to play games. Play this one.
The all-star line, when you're running out Tavares, Matthews, Marner, that's because it's like we're throwing our hands up. You guys just go do your thing. It's all on you at this point, and sink or swim.
Kyle Dubas in February and March, he was preparing like they were going to miss the playoffs. They were going full experimental. You guys just figure it out on your friggin' own. Mm-hmm. And we talked about certain teams who didn't even want to be in the bubble. The Leafs, I think, from a management perspective, were like, all right, we'll see where this goes. Like, you're not going to turn down an opportunity at the Stanley Cup and to play, and you get to evaluate your talent and see where you're at. But I don't think there were any illusions. I think that and that's what I've been trying to pitch for a long time in terms of strategy. Whether you agree with Kyle Dubas or not, that's fine. Lots of people like what he's doing. Some people hate what he's doing. But what I was trying to comfort people with when the Leafs lost in the bubble is, listen, Leaf fans, if you don't like what you see from this team, don't worry. Kyle Dubas agrees. And look what he's done.
Except for on Cody Ceci.
Yeah.
Something tells me Cody Ceci getting $5 million isn't happening. Something tells me that's not happening, man.
And thank God they're not going to circle back because they don't have the money.
You know what? Thank God. Instead, they gave it to TJ Brodie. Do you imagine? That guy's asking for what TJ Brodie got? Fire your agent. You're getting bad advice. Jesus. Oh, my God.
Honestly, he's going to be lucky to get a PTO at this point.
Yes.
Yeah. He's going to have to go to Europe or something. So PTO, I'm sure. But if he wants to make real money, better go to the K or you better go to Europe.
I mean, I would assume he could get what Bogosian got. 1-1.
That's a big assumption, man. I don't know.
5?
No, 1 million? I don't know that he could. You could have, Travis Hamonic is still available.
That's crazy, eh?
Slater Cuckoo is still available.
I think
why would anybody even call Cody Ceci before those guys are signed? And this is what, day 6?
I think Hoffman, there's no way Hoffman, who is probably the biggest free agent remaining, there's no way he hasn't gotten an offer, and whatever it was a mistake not to sign it.
Yep. Dadonov, same thing.
Dadonov, it's like, remember Cody Franzen a few years ago? No, yes. I'm going to hold out for the big money. Well, that was several weeks into free agency. Time is moving wicked fast right now in terms of free agency.
So hold on. When you say remember Cody Franzen, we have to context that.
Sorry.
Cody Franzen was offered a 5-year, $25 million extension from the Toronto Maple Leafs, which he turned down.
I thought it was bigger. And
what I remember was $5.25.
He ended up getting 2 times 3.
With Buffalo.
Did he?
Yeah, with Buffalo.
Ew. Like that is, and they haven't made the playoffs since. That is, he misread the market, but that used to take weeks to do. Now, if you didn't find a dance partner in the first 2 days, unless you're Alex Pietrangelo, where the hell are you going?
Right.
Like, someone's going to mess around. I was talking to someone about this the other day. Some team like Columbus is going to mess around and like sign Hoffman and Dadonov and because they're going to be like the only team with any space left.
Hoffman, Dadonov, Michael Granlund, Eric Haula, Anthony Duclair, Carl Soderberg, Corey Perry, all available. Sammy Vatanen, Travis Hamonic, also available. Craig Anderson is also available.
Doesn't have a team. Like all the guys you just name are good.
Yeah, all of them. They're legitimate NHLers, all of them, and not like Guy. A lot of those guys are difference makers,
and they've hurt their next contract too. Because you just mentioned Vatanen. Oh, power play guy. Who doesn't have a top power play guy right now? Everyone's got a top power play guy. They're at least responsible enough to have that planned. So Vatanen's going to go somewhere. He'll be the PP2 guy if he gets on the power play at all, and then that's going to hurt his next deal because he won't be getting his cookies.
What I wonder, who couldn't see this coming with Anthony Duclair? I really feel like first off, you take a major risk representing yourself. And I'm not saying that the Senators are a particularly easy organization to deal with on a business sense, or easy to play for. Frankly, things are hard in Ottawa right now. So I understand that. However, at a certain point, you found success there. Secure the bag.
I think he'll end up re-signing in Ottawa. They still have to hit the cap floor. So
what is this thing about him negotiating his own deal? Is that
he said he wanted to represent himself because obviously then you don't have to pay your 3 or 4% agency fee. And I don't know, maybe he just doesn't trust anyone. I don't know.
No issue with that.
We can ask. So we're going to have Hailey Salvian on next, and actually in a couple minutes. So why don't we ask her? I want to talk to her about that. Obviously, we're going to talk about Dani Rylan Kearney as well, stepping down from the NWHL commissioner. And the thing is, that's crazy about that is she founded this league and now she's stepping down from it. And I wonder what that is all about. And part of me wonders, and I'm going to ask Hailey this, is that what needed to happen for women's hockey to come together? Just a thought. Mm-hmm. Just a thought. Don't know. So we'll get into that next. So Hailey Salvian on, obviously Sens reporter extraordinaire for The Athletic, as well as one of the people that, frankly, whenever we do anything women's hockey related, I always have to be the one calling Hailey. And Hailey, to her credit, has spent hours on the phone explaining the intricacies of what's been going on. And that's sort of where we want to start because Hailey, I mean, I was, frankly, when we were interviewing Dani Rylan Kearney this spring, I was on the phone to you going, I got to understand some stuff here that I really don't get. And you were gracious enough with your time to spend like 45 minutes with me going through it all. But for her, based on what we saw in our interview with her, and admittedly, we're sort of a lighter show. We're not going to go like hard-hitting news with her. It was pretty clear that she's a very passionate person, very clear that she's a goal-driven person. In everything that she's done in hockey and obviously in founding a league, this is a person that's like dog on a bone, like, let's go. Sort of a shock to see her stepping down. Can you give us a little bit of reasoning why you think that might have happened?
Yeah, well, first, I think I'd just say it just kind of shows the commitment that you guys have to covering women's hockey and doing it well. The fact that you did call me and ask me those questions, I think it's really awesome that you guys not only give it a platform, but you make sure you do your research and you do it properly. I think there's a lot of people who probably can't say the same. So a hat tip to you guys for putting in that kind of effort. But in terms of Dani, yeah, I think you're absolutely right when you say that she's, that go-getter type personality. Like, she played men's hockey in college, and then she, paid her way through school selling water bottles outside of, the baseball stadium in Boston, I believe, with a sign that said, it's $5 for a bottle of water out there, but it's $2 here. And she paid her way through school, like sitting outside of the stadium, just selling water. Like, this is a person who could sell you the shirt off your back. Like, she's so great in that sense. But at the same time, there's obviously a lot of, controversy, and there's a lot of complicated stuff around the NWHL, and that, all of the issues between the NWHL and the PWHPA. But all of that's my roundabout way of saying that, yeah, it is surprising that she is stepping down, because this is her baby. She founded this league in 2015. This is going to be the first time that Dani Rylan is, there's going to be a commissioner who's not Dani Rylan Kearney now. So it is surprising, but from day one, even if you look back to the first press conferences from 2015, the goal of the NWHL was always to start as that private investor league. They have that central pot, everything's under the league umbrella. They have their sponsorships from the league, et cetera, et cetera. And the goal was always to make sure that all of the teams were privately owned and privately run outside of the NWHL umbrella. So we saw that happen first with the Buffalo Beauts when the Pagulas bought them, and then handed the Beauts back to the league. And then the Boston Pride were purchased last year, I believe, in 2019. And then the Toronto Six team has now come in with private ownership as well. And there's a bit of overlap in the ownership groups between Toronto and Boston. So the goal was always to have all of the teams purchased. But obviously, only having 2 of 6 teams under private ownership 5 years in, heading into year number 6, I think that you could, say that's a bit of a slow burn. It's taken a little bit for them to get to what that goal is. And so I think this move is, it's just a reshuffling in a way to try to fast track what that, ultimate goal has been from day one. It's Dani stepping down, and now she's going to be the president of the 4 teams that don't have private ownership, and she's going to go back to the days of her selling not water, but selling these hockey teams and selling these franchises to private ownership to ultimately get the league to where they've always wanted to be. So she's not the commissioner, but she's still going to have a very important role. And yeah, she's going to go back to that, really, bulldog, like, I'm going to sell you your own shirt that you're wearing right now kind of attitude. So
go ahead, Steve.
Well, could you see her becoming the commissioner again one day? Because, having her still involved, and obviously she's, very ambitious. It sort of sounds like she has a mission. She wants to accomplish it. And then once she's done with that, I would assume she would want her rightful, however you look at it, spot as commissioner again.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And I'm honestly not sure what the answer to that is right now. I think the interim commissioner, Ty Timinia, she was a baseball executive. She was also a part of that ownership and leadership group with the Toronto Six franchise that was announced this year that I believe we talked about. She's going to be the interim commissioner. She's no longer going to be the chairwoman of the Toronto Six. And I think they're going to give her, she's going to get a shot to run this while Dani does, what she's going to be doing as president. And yeah, I think it's a good question, Steve, but I honestly don't know what Dani's personal goals are. She just got married. There's obviously, like, this is the league that she created, and she's, tried to build up from the ground up. But, like we mentioned, there's a lot of controversy and complicated stuff there, and lots of hate that I think gets thrown her way. So that's just speculative on me. I don't know what Dani Rylan Kearney's personal goals are, but I could see her wanting to be involved. I don't know if she would force someone to step down to let her take over again, but I could always see her being involved in the future of this league for sure.
Is this what needed to happen, Hailey, for women's hockey to come together? And I understand, understanding the past controversy with Dani Rylan specifically, because the NWHL, she's been the face of the league, and there are players such as Hilary Knight, major stars in the sport who frankly just will not work with her, won't even discuss it. And, or at least that was where we left it in the spring when you and I spoke. So if that's changed, then please correct me. But if Dani Rylan steps down here, is still involved, and I don't know what her ownership stake or what she financially has invested in this league, and maybe we can get to that as well. Is this what we need to have the PWHPA and the NWHL come together? Because the NWHL needs the players, the PWHPA needs the league.
Yeah, that's a good way. That's a really good way to put it. But honestly, no, I don't see this being the move that needed to happen to bring things back together. I think if you speak to the players in the PWHPA, and obviously some of the players have issues with the NWHL and the leadership group and the way the league was run. They've spoken to me about that, in the stories that I've done. I had that, novel that I wrote on the, why they won't play inside 20 years of women's hockey. And, that was a lengthy one. And I got into some of that there. And, part of it was, there was a distrust within the leadership group from the players of the league and the business model specifically. So obviously shaking up the leadership, shaking up that model, I think it's good, but I don't know how much that changes things, because the players have always said that it's more than just about the leadership. Like, the issues that they have go deeper than just who the commissioner is. I think it's, we all know what the goal of the PWHPA is. They want a truly professional league, and they want the support and the backing of the NHL. Like, they're looking for the WNBA, NBA model. And I don't think that these changes with the NWHL, while they are shifting to, a more NHL kind of governance and having the teams all, privately run and owned like we see NHL teams, I just don't think that that's enough to bring these players back.
As a follow-up to that, sorry, Steve, let me just jump in here for a second. I apologize.
No.
The follow-up to that, is that a reasonable goal for them to have, the PWHPA, given what's gone on with COVID-19? We've seen the economics of the league change drastically. We don't know, and we're going to get to the Eugene Melnick comments about 6,000 people in the stands later on in this interview, because we do want to talk to you about that. You're smiling already. But, I wonder, is that even going to be possible if we're looking at flat cap situations for the next 3 years? We're probably looking at a pandemic that lasts minimum all the way through 2021 now. Mm-hmm. Maybe longer. What does that look like for the PWHPA, who, if there's no pandemic, I'm sure that the NHL is right there ready to go. But at this point, there are teams that are struggling to make the floor of the salary cap. And I wondered about the viability of a plan like that.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a good question. And that's something that when I originally did this story, and this just shows how long we've been in this, pandemic life, that, this was still going on. Like, this happened when I wrote this story months and months ago. And that was something that Bill Daly brought up to me when I was asking him about, the players have laid out specifically what they want now. Do you have an updated stance on the NHL's plans for women's hockey? And he said that, he essentially played up our stance is consistent. We don't have a business plan or model in place to have a professional women's hockey league. And then he said, and particularly in light of the uncertainty in the world of professional sports, it becomes even more challenging for the NHL to even plan into the future for their own league, let alone creating a new league. So it definitely adds a huge wrinkle to what the PWHPA's ultimate goal is. But I still think that they're not just fighting for a WNHL. They're fighting for a place to play that they believe is truly professional. And the NWHL believes that they provide that. And if you ask players with the Boston Pride who have been privately owned, they get more flights than buses. They get better hotels. They get better facilities. They have a gym. They have personal trainers. They have way more than the leagues or the teams, who aren't privately owned. So perhaps if the NWHL is successful in getting really good owners and all of a sudden the league is looking like the professional league everyone's wanted, maybe something could happen. I don't want to say that's going to be true, without a doubt. But I think the other side of that question, though, Adam, is, yes, Dani Rylan's an excellent businesswoman, and she's very, she's kind of like a bulldog in that sense. But is it the right time to be selling to people to buy a women's hockey team in the middle of a pandemic. I think it kind of is on both sides, right? You know, the NHL may not be able to create a league right now, but the NWHL might not be able to find people who are going to say, yeah, take my money in the middle of a pandemic with all this uncertainty. We don't know when hockey's going to be back, but take my money and I'll buy this franchise. So I think it's issues on both sides.
We talked about players needing a league and a league needing players. They both need games. Have you, I'm sure one of your greatest anxieties right now, like mine, is when the heck are we going to see hockey again? People on the ice, NWHL, NHL. Do you have any update on that, at least when it comes to the NWHL? Because I know they had plans for, I think it was late fall or early winter, and it's kind of getting there.
Yeah, so the NWHL released that they were going to push their start of the season back till January. And the reasons behind that was, you know, essentially to push the start date back so they can continue to monitor the situation with COVID-19. Obviously, with the Toronto franchise, now you have cross-border travel. And then you also have trips from Minnesota to Boston. And, you know, some teams fly, some teams drive to Buffalo, et cetera. So essentially, they pushed everything back so they could continue to monitor COVID. Do they have to delay again? Will they even be able to travel? What are the restrictions between going Canada to the US? What are the restrictions between the different cities? So that was the main reason why they pushed it back. And obviously, as we're seeing, you know, we're kind of in that second wave now. There was I don't see how they would have been able to be playing right now. But the teams, I think, are still operating, like players are still able to practice. And essentially what it's given them is an opportunity to have like a longer kind of preseason training camp-ish, you know, lets everyone get on the ice. Although I'm not totally familiar with what the restrictions and the policies are for those practices and how many people are allowed on the ice. I don't really know the answer to that right now. But the NWHL's plan as of right now is to be back in January. The PWHPA, I think they've had a couple of games because I've seen the streams, but that they've had a bunch of technical difficulties on that, you know, people haven't really been able to watch. But those are more like inter-squad games or not, you know, they're not having the big showcases because you can't host a big event with, you know, hundreds or 1,000 people right now. So it's really been difficult. I think like women's hockey is basically at a standstill. NCAA women's hockey, you know, we don't know what's happening with the NCAA next season. I know some of the men's teams are going in a bubble in Omaha, I think is where that is probably going to be with the NCHC, but women's hockey, like a lot of stuff is just kind of paused right now. And it's just going to be kind of waiting and watching to see if they're going to be allowed to play and how different is it going to be.
This might not be information that the public is privy to, but do you have like an estimation on how much the franchises are valued at and what they're trying to sell them at, like a rough number?
That's a good question. I honestly don't know the answer to that. I don't know how much they would say that is worth. I don't even know how they would come up with that value, if I'm being honest. But that's actually a really good question and like probably a good story that I should, you know, maybe do now that
I'd love to know.
I would like some credit on that story, please. Thank you.
Free subscription. Let's go.
By Hailey, Salvian, and Jesse Blake too.
Jesse.
byline on it.
Yeah, there you go.
Something.
That's more than you deserve, Jesse.
Oh, I know.
Hailey, obviously so much going on with the Senators this year. But, you know, as Steve likes to say, when you hear owners talk, it's rarely good. And Eugene Melnick is a guy you hear talking a lot. Maybe a little less so during last season, which was good. But the Financial Post came out with an interview with Eugene Melnick today. And Eugene Melnick is a dynamite quote on the worst of days. But this one in particular caught a lot of people's eyes. And Jesse actually was nice enough to transcribe it into our messenger. So I'm going to read from that. He said, "I can assure you that even the Ottawa Senators, who don't have a great record of bringing fans in over the past few years, will have a sellout crowd." And what he's talking about is next season. And what he's talking about is allowing 6,000 people in to the stadium to eat, drink, and be merry and enjoy the game. Now, Canada has been far stricter about our COVID policies than Americans have. However, you get the sense reading this article that, he said we have to break even. 6,000 people would allow us to break even. Number two, you get the sense that Eugene's not just pulling that out of the air. It seems like this is a discussion that he is repeating, a discussion he was a part of, potentially an inside look into what is being discussed with the NHL owners currently. Can you give us your thoughts on first off, maybe where that came from, and second, what the chances of it happening are? I mean, is Eugene Melnick just being Eugene, or is this a thing that is floating around and we're really going to get ready to see something like this?
Yeah, well, I think that if he has, everything in specifics that way, I would assume that's definitely something that's being talked about. At what level, I'm not sure, because I think I always look to the discussions that are happening in junior hockey. They're not allowed to have any fans. They're not even allowed to have body checking and fighting. Fighting, I can understand, but the no body checking, the no fans, the U.S. teams can't come over. So if that's the discussions that we're having in Canada and Ontario about just junior hockey, I don't know how you're going to execute that on a larger scale in the National Hockey League. Obviously, the arenas are bigger, so there's better chances of social distancing. We are seeing some NFL teams who were allowed to have like a certain percent of their capacities to have fans in the stands. You have to wear a mask the whole time, but you're outside, so it's a little bit, even you're outside, so it's different. Like, it's weird. And I think if there are legitimate conversations happening about how fans are going to be allowed inside the building, then I think that's great. But I just don't know if that is going to be a realistic thing. I think it's probably fair to think that the league has looked to start the season January 1st at the earliest at this point as a way to continue to delay until letting fans in the building. Because I think, gate revenue is not the whole pie, but it's definitely a significant piece of it, especially for teams where, the Senators last year, I think they had just over 12,000 fans in the building. Money's going to be tight when you can't get fans in the building pre-pandemic. And if you have zero fans in a pandemic, I can only imagine the financial situation. But, that's kind of me rambling on to say, I have no idea if that is a legitimate thing that's going to be allowed. I think it's an interesting conversation, but again, it's just going to be, we don't set the timeline. Eugene Melnick doesn't set the timeline. Nobody sets these rules and schedules other than the COVID. I know that sounds so silly, but we can try to say that this is our plan and this is what we're going to do. But look, we're still in it. It's been 7 months since I've been into a hockey rink.
Right.
Sorry if that's really sad and depressing.
Oh no, it's all really sad. It's all relative, right? I mean,
yeah.
How can we be sad at this point?
Right.
Haley, if you're anything like me, you like to close your eyes and pretend like everything's going to be fine and there's going to be a season. Going forward,
I need to get out of the house.
Oh, yeah. So going forward with that mindset, because like you said, we don't know. We have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
Sens have a new starting goaltender. What was your first reaction when you saw that they went out and got Matt Murray and then also extended him?
Yeah, I think, and I will say, I do think there's going to be a season. I don't want to sound all doom and gloom, there's going to be no sports, but, we saw what happened with the bubble. The playoffs were really successful. And I think the conversations we were having before then was there's no way they're going to be able to do this. So I do have faith that, we'll figure something out and we'll have hockey and we'll have, life back at some point. But in terms of Matt Murray, I think it's, at first I didn't really quite understand, they said that Anders Nilsson was, doing better, Nilsson and Hogberg was always going to be the goalie tandem for next year. So at first, some of the rumors about Matt Murray, at first, I didn't really think it made a lot of sense. But then when you kind of started to read between the lines about things, obviously there was major questions about the health of Anders Nilsson. And we now know that he is still experiencing post-concussion symptoms from the concussion he suffered in December when he exerts himself too much back home in Sweden. So the Senators needed to go out and get somebody, and Nilsson only has 1 year left on his deal. And Högberg, he really only has under 30 NHL games in his career. So you can't have Marcus Högberg, rushed into a full-time starting position. You can't rush one of the younger prospects into a backup or a starting position if Marcus Högberg falters. So they really needed to go out and get somebody. And I think Matt Murray has the potential, the Matt Murray in Ottawa has the potential to be a really great fit. I think if you look at, everything that Matt Murray went through in a really roller coaster 5 years of his career in Pittsburgh, he's only had one season with a sub 900 save percentage. He's not a bad goaltender. I know he's had a couple of, iffy years, but if you look at a lot of the personal stuff he's been through too, his dad passed away. He was, I don't doubt that Penguins fans liked Matt Murray, but at the end of the day, he was the guy who took Marc-Andre Fleury's spot. They protected Matt Murray over Marc-Andre Fleury, and he took the brunt of that from the fan base. He's not going to have that in Ottawa. He's going to be welcomed as the new starter. And there's not going to be the same kind of weight of expectation. It's not going to be that you're not Flower. Why didn't you play like Flower, whatever? He would have had that save. So I think the expectations are going to be way less on Matt Murray, and it's a fresh start. Like I said, it was a bit of a roller coaster for him. The back-to-back Stanley Cups is a crazy way to kick off your NHL career coming out of the American Hockey League. And, it's been a bit of a downhill slide for him the last couple seasons. But, I think if there's, a coach and a team where he could have a really good redemption story, I think the Senators have shown that they can be a really good place for guys to really revitalize their careers, because they're just given the space and the time to do it. You're not going to get benched if you make a mistake in Ottawa, because they're not going to be a very good team next year, likely. I think they're going to do better, but it's the same thing with Anthony Duclair. In Columbus or Arizona, if you make a mistake in the defensive zone there, you're on the bench because you just made a big mistake and it cost them a point in the standings. But in Ottawa, DJ Smith is going to let you go and play your game. He's going to hone you in if you're making some mistakes and not playing his system. But by all intents and purposes, you're going to be given a really good shot to show what you can do and really find your game. And I think that's no different for Matt Murray.
Do you think that Anthony Duclair has made a bad choice in A, representing himself, and B, I don't know what the Senators offered him as an extension. I'm not sure if you've got any insight on that, but he's still unsigned, and he's a top 10 unsigned forward at this point, but not top 5. And we've got some pretty big names out there that remain unsigned, including Mike Hoffman and Dadonov as well from Florida. I mean, those guys probably go before he does. What's Anthony Duclair's future, and does he just still end up in Ottawa?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, and that's certainly been a big story here. And I think it's going to be one where we continue to see that narrative change as it goes on. And I wrote that in my piece last week. It's going to be hard to know if he made a mistake here. And it's starting to look maybe a little bit like, mistakes were made. But at the same time, I don't know what his personal reasoning was for wanting to represent himself. I don't know why he decided that he wanted to do that. I know that it's probably not the best idea to represent yourself in probably the weirdest and, most difficult offseason to get paid as a free agent. We're seeing people get squeezed. We're seeing really good players not get qualified more than ever this year. I think having an agent to help you wade through that would have been very helpful. But again, I don't know what the motivation was for Anthony to do this. If there was something at play that, he's feeling empowered and he wants to do this for himself and, finally prove his value and prove his worth and fight for what he believes he deserves. And I think, that could be a really good reason for that. So I don't want to, I think that it's a bad idea to represent yourself. And like I said, a very strange off season. I don't want to cast aspersions when I don't exactly know, why he's approaching it this way. In terms of what's going to happen, I think, like I said, this is a really weird off season. For the Senators, I know that they were afraid. I say afraid. I don't know if that's the right terminology, but I think the Senators, like most teams, were fearful of getting locked into a high arbitration award when, the Senators aren't cap strapped by any means, but I think you could call them a cash strapped team. So, really every penny counts. And when you look at what Anthony Duclair has done the last couple seasons, he He scored 23, 22 goals last season. The year before, he was a couple goals and a couple points shy of another 20-point, 40-point season, and he was a 20-goal scorer in Arizona. So while he had a couple of up and down seasons, he's still almost a 3-time 20-goal, 40-point guy. So I think the Senators could have gotten locked into a pretty high arbitration award at between 3.5 and 4 million. So I think we can assume that their offer on the table was less than that. Certainly because the walkaway number in arbitration for Duclair would have been around 4.5 million. So we know that they were offering less than the walkaway number. I think I saw some speculation that he was offered, with a 4 and change. And I was like, well, that doesn't make sense because my understanding is that the walkaway number is 4.5. So you wouldn't offer somebody the same thing that they would have gotten in arbitration. So my understanding is that this is also the second straight year that this has happened to Anthony Duclair, in the sense of being told, if you go to arbitration, we are not going to give you a qualifying offer. So he didn't go to arbitration last year. He signed a 1-year, $1.65 million contract, scored 23 goals, scored 40 points, had a great season, showed everyone, hey, I can play. I'm an NHL All-Star. He probably went back to the table and said, okay, that was my show me year. I showed you. Like, I want to be part of this core. Something obviously would have happened there. The offer on the table was not what Anthony Duclair believed he deserved. And I think that's just me assuming and imagining what that situation would have been. I just believe that, in my understanding of it, is that, it's 2 years in a row that Anthony Duclair felt undervalued, and, he wanted to get what he believes he's worth. Again, it's difficult to do that in this kind of a season, but, I obviously wish the best for Anthony, and I hope he gets, what he deserves, because I think he's a hell of a hockey player. And definitely, I feel like I'm so rambly. Like, why do I talk so much?
Well, you're a guest on the show. We were hoping you might talk. We want to hear what you think. That's why.
To answer the final part of your question, I would say, I asked Pierre Dorian if, Anthony Duclair had circled back and if there's an opportunity for him to circle back. And he said that, they're never going to close the door on anything. So I don't know. We'll see what happens.
That was my next question. So, because I think he ends up back there.
Yeah, it does feel that way.
I think if he does, though, if he does circle back, I don't know. I feel like it would probably be at less than what the original offer would have been. That's just what I would think. It's like, well,
probably.
We offered you this, you left, you didn't want it, you thought you deserved more, and you didn't get anything. So we're going to knock you down a couple of bucks. But
do you think he gets term on a deal like that?
I don't know, because I think that for Anthony, term and dollar would have been equally important, because in his statement he said that he expressed his desire to be a part of this core in Ottawa. So I would assume that saying, hey, I want to be a part of this core group, that he was asking for some term, as well as the money that he believes he's owed. So I don't know. I could have seen, like, arbitration would have been a 1 to 2 year deal, and the Senators wanted to avoid a 1 to 2 year deal with a high ARB award. So I don't know what that offer on the table was. I haven't been able to find out, but we'll see what happens. Like I said, I just hope that Anthony lands somewhere and he can continue to play his best hockey.
Lastly, Hailey, just at least lastly on the Senators, they seem to be jubilant after round one of the draft. In fact, Pierre Dorian said specifically that it had changed the direction of the franchise forever. Is that what you came away with? Or is that just an excited GM who's pumped about the picks that he made? Also, I believe one of their picks, is it Stützle that broke his arm today?
Yes.
Am I wrong?
Yeah, it was Tim Stützle broke his hand. So
broke his hand.
Going into surgery on Thursday, so tomorrow.
So he'll be okay. And what are your thoughts on the picks? And do you think that it's changed the future of the franchise?
I really liked, I know a lot of fans maybe weren't happy with some of the selections that were made, especially maybe at number 5. Some of the later picks, I think a lot of, fans were kind of like, who are these players? They're not ranked on this draft board that high. I don't think that was just Pierre. I don't think that was Pierre showboating. I think that this draft, we all knew heading into it, was going to be, franchise altering for this organization. And, they added a future number one center. I personally believe, and from what I've been told, that Tim Stützle is a number one center in the National Hockey League. So not only did they get a number one center, which is the hardest position to, groom, and you're going to get it in the draft because no one's trading you their top center. You don't get a number one guy via trade or free agency. It's just when you hold on to them. So they got a really difficult position to fill a hole. They also added who I believe is the top defensive player in this draft. Sorry, my phone's blowing up today. They got a really, really good defenseman in Jake Sanderson. I wonder why.
Uh-huh.
Jake Sanderson's a great defenseman. Playing at University of North Dakota, he's gonna I think he's gonna be a really good player. They have Thomas Chabot on number one, and then they're gonna have a really good shutdown guy in Sanderson. And then some of their other picks, Ridley Gregg, I think, that's a good style that they like. He had a really funny quote. Someone asked him, would you compare yourself to Brad Marchand? And he was like, yeah, maybe, but just not as greasy, which I really appreciate.
Love.
Super good, gritty, but really high skilled guy, kind of like a Brady Tkachuk type. So, I think the moves that the Senators did, if you look, a lot of the guys they picked in the later rounds are big. They got a big goaltender. They got a couple more big defensemen. Tyler Klevin is a guy, if you watch any Tyler Klevin, he just destroys people with the body, and, he's a good, he's a good defenseman as well. So the Senators I saw really, buying into the building from the back end and out. They added some really solid pieces to make them, harder to play against. And I think it was a really good draft for the Senators. Obviously, it's easy to criticize when you have, analytics or your draft boards, but we don't know until these guys develop. We have no idea what's going to happen with these players. I think, look at the, just speaking to the Leafs, I was talking to somebody about this before, look at what people are saying about Kyle Dubas's draft and, he didn't get anyone that's over 5'10". But look at the 2016 draft. They drafted Austin Matthews and a bunch of monster players. Who's actually playing from that draft year other than
Austin Matthews?
Exactly. So we can talk about how good or how horrible a draft is, but we have no idea until these players actually get to the professional level and we can see what they look like. But for right now, I think that the Senators have a really great scouting staff, and Pierre Dorion was a scout for a decade before his decade running the draft in Ottawa. So if there's something that I trust when Pierre Dorion is talking about something being very good, it's his scouting and his drafting ability. So we got to wait and see. But I personally think that it was a good draft.
Sorry to talk about the 2016 draft. The guy who's played the second most games for the Leafs after Austin Matthews from the 2016 draft, hulking 5'10", 181-pound Adam Brooks.
Oh, wow.
He's in that draft class.
And they keep talking about Korshkov like he might come over and play for the Marlies. Or has he? Has he played for the Marlies yet?
Yes, he has. I mean, if there's a Marlies to play for, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, Hailey, we really appreciate your time. We understand the reasons why your phone is blowing up. But kick-ass job as always. We love having you on. And we hope that there's many more of these appearances. We have no idea when hockey's going to be back. So we might just be hitting you up when we're thin on content too,
It's fine. We can talk about how I honestly didn't believe that Steve actually had a child. I still feel bad about that. When I saw those tweets, I was like, is that real? Oh my God. And
it looked like a doll, to be fair.
It did.
Can you imagine if I was psychotic enough to be like, April Fool's in June, I have a kid?
Steve, I don't think Hailey had to imagine it.
Yeah.
Apparently not.
That's funny. We can't.
Beautiful thing for Steve. I have a child. There's life in this world. I'm like, is that real? So
I'd forgotten that happened, Hailey. That's amazing. So listen, thank you, Hailey Salvian of The Athletic. Thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Well, that was fun. An eventful day for Hailey, an eventful day for us. And thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate it as always. We're going to be back on Sunday this week. I realize, with Canadian Thanksgiving, it kind of messed up the schedule for all of our American listeners. Thank you so much for hanging in there. American, Swedish, Australian, British, Finnish, wherever you're from. Nobody celebrates Thanksgiving as early as Canadians do. And in fact, we're the only continent that has Thanksgiving, really. So thank you so much for listening. Shout out to American Thanksgiving that's coming in 6 weeks. Which is, by the way, the better time to have it. I'll give the Americans
none of that was necessary.
Well, listen, context is key. Guys, let me just...
Adam, tell me about the history of Thanksgiving.
Yeah, Adam, tell us about the Pilgrims.
I'm going to go to sleep now. Bye.
Okay.
I love you guys. We'll see you Sunday.
The Steve Dangle Podcast. Follow the guys on Twitter at Steve_Dangle, at Adam WYLDE, and at Jesse Blake. Connection complete.